Welcome to Art Techniques with Sheena. This is a video about when and how to use the spatter technique. And spatter is a spray of small drops. And I am here at East LaPorte Park in Jackson County. Beautiful view of the river. I have all my watercolor supplies set up here. First of all, for when to use spatter, you can use spatter to create texture. In this painting, I used tiny little drops of sort of a darker purplish color on top of a lighter purple to create the texture of the road. In this painting, I used little white droplets, probably white acrylic paint on top of the watercolor, and that was to create the texture of snow. A second way to use spatter is to add interest to blank spaces that don't really have much else going on. In this painting, and this is a painting of my mom sitting on her porch, I had a big area of blank space down here at the bottom. So just to add some interest to this blank space, I added some sprays, spatter of little purple, the purple color, the same color that's in here in the railings. And a third time to use spatter is to add unity to an artwork, just kind of like bring everything together, make it all look like just one complete artwork. So in this painting of a forest, I added some green spatter, oh, and some kind of reddish brown spatter up here, and then down below I added some of those same colors, the green and the reddish brown, and those are the main colors in this painting. So that just kind of helped everything, just kind of helped tie everything together, helped everything match together, because there's these big chunky tree shapes and like the ground shape, and then the background trees, and then the spatter just adds like some tiny little shapes in there. Oh, and here's some medium-sized shapes. So it kind of can help bring everything together and add some variety in their sizes of shapes. So that was when to use spatter, when you want to have texture, add interest to blank spaces, and then to add unity, which helps kind of bring everything together. Now to show you how to actually create the spatter. Let me get my watercolor tray. To create spatter, this is when you want to use a stiff brush. So these are some stiff brushes. These are not the kind of brushes that look like little mops. These are stiff brushes like you would use for acrylic paint. And let me get some water. I'm going to pour some water, just a little bit of water in my tray, and a little bit of water in my little cup here. Alright, and then get your brush wet and transfer some color into your area of water. To create a watery layer of color, and that is called, or when you paint it on the paper, that's called a wash. And then I'm going to use some tube watercolor to add to this little cup. I think I have too much water. Pour some out, and then Squeeze in some of this paint and go ahead and close that. Okay, and then with my other brush, I'm gonna stir all this together, creating another wash. And I'm just showing you how to make your wash with the watercolor tray and in a separate little container in case you need more of the color. So, almost fell. To do the spatter, you take your stiff brush and dip it in the color and then hold it out in front of you, and then take your finger and pull the bristles back and then move forward a little bit. And you can play around with the distance. If you're closer to the paper, the spatter won't take up quite as much space across the paper. If you're far away, the spatter will take up more space and go further on the page. If you're doing spatter and you get really big drops, you can soak them up and that'll get up most of the paint, especially if you get it right away. And if you're going to spatter a watercolor painting that you spent time on, I recommend trying it out on some other paper first, just to get some practice. And that was with the wash in that cup. With this tray. And again, and actually you can hold it in one hand. I'm holding it with my hand. And then pulling back on the bristles. And again, it's making some large little drops too. And you can also try getting your brush wet and then getting it in the paint can of color. Let's see if that makes a difference. It's still dripping a little bit. That makes it a darker color. Something I like to use even more than the brushes is a toothbrush. So I save all my old toothbrushes and use them for this sort of thing. You can just get your toothbrush wet in either a pre-made color or you can dip it in a container of water and then dab it in your color a little bit. And then same thing, hold it out, bristles away from you, and then pull up on the bristles, creating spatter. That actually works so much better using the toothbrush. The toothbrush bristles are very stiff and they just work really well. And you can use more than one color. Let me clean my toothbrush. Swirl it around in some water. Okay, let me add some, I'll try some red. Oh, that wasn't much color on it. Try that again. Get some more. Ah, beautiful. Okay, so that is spatter, small drops of color, and you may have heard the word splatter before. So the difference is spatter is the small little drops, and they're, you know, usually kind of an organized spray of little tiny drops. But splatter is when you have you just like drip it on there like that. That's splatter, just to show you the difference. I'm going to show how to add watercolor paint spatter to a painting that's mostly done. This is a painting that I did a few months ago, and I like the fruit part of it. However, I think the background needs something else to make it a little more interesting. Right now it's got a lot of kind of open space that has a little bit of color, a little bit of purple color, but not really much else in it. It's also hard to see where the end of the table ends. So I want to make all this like a little more clear where the table ends and where the wall is, and just some more interesting texture along here. So first off, I'm going to protect the parts that I don't want watercolor paint droplets to get onto. And I'm going to do that with painter's tape and with some sturdy paper. First, with the painter's tape, I'm going to peel off a piece a little bit wider than my paper and put it right above where the table ends. And smooth it down. And then for covering up these shapes, I'm going to try to cut out some shapes that have similar curves to them, and try to get the same curve and the same amount of space. And it's probably going to take several little pieces of paper, but I'm going to try it. Okay, now I've blocked off everywhere where I don't want the watercolor spatter to get onto. And now I'm going to get the paint spatter ready. I'm going to use some colors that were already in the still life. So I'm going to be using yellow, green, red, and maybe some purple. The background's kind of purplish. So to get those ready, I'm going to put a little water in some of my sections. And then I'm going to use some regular watercolor brushes to prepare the colors. I'm going to get my brush wet, and I'll start with the lightest color, yellow. And then clean off my brush, swirling it around in here. Now I'm going to switch to my favorite tool for spattering, and that's the toothbrush. And I'm going to start with the lightest color. Some of this, some yellow. Looking at that yellow, it just looks so transparent. So I'm going to come over here and dab it in the pan of yellow to make sure I've got enough yellow on the toothbrush. And then I'm going to hold it bristles away from me and farther back a little bit, and then pull up on the bristles. Oh, there is not much color on there, so I'm gonna get into this pan again and just dab it a little bit and then do a little bit more. Okay, reload and reload. Okay. All right, now I'm going to let this dry. Blot up some of this wet part. And I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes and then come back to it and peel off the paper and see how everything looks. All right, it's had some time to dry now, so I'm going to try taking off this paper and see how that goes. Let me make sure there's no wet paint on this tape first. Alright. Ooh, I like it. This is much more interesting than how it looked at the beginning. However, there's another part that I covered up and didn't mean to. So I'm gonna try to camouflage that. Alright, here's how this looks now with a spattered tabletop part of the background. One thing I might do later is put painter's tape along here and add some more color, maybe just a solid color to the background. Alright, thank you for watching.